All right, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of vBrownBag. We were just counting them down the other day, and this is the 1966th episode of vBrownBag. Welcome to everybody. Tonight, we are going to go into a little bit of Amazon AppStream. And with us today is the illustrious, the amazing, the super smart David Ball. And he's going to talk about virtual desktops. But before we get into that, get in on the conversation. If you at vBrownBag or hashtag vBrownBag, I will be paying attention to the Twitters. If you are in the audience, I will be paying attention to the Q&A. I'll be working with the peanut gallery to make sure that only the good questions get through. That's not true. All the questions are good. We have an amazing and smart audience. I love them to pieces. But we also have, of course, the Asia Pac, Brazil, EMEA, and LATAM vBrownBags as well. So if you are in those area codes, time zones, then pay attention to those as well. We are going to be ramping up with an AWS Hero series that is going to cover the globe. We have AWS Heroes in all the time zones, and we are currently working with them to do a Heroes on vBrownBag series. So we're excited to get that launched as well. So in the vein of AWS goodness, let me turn the power. Well, hold on. Before I get there, let me brag about you a little bit more. He is at David. You can follow him on Twitter at David Jason Ball. And I highly encourage it. He's got some good stuff that he tweets out, and he's a font of knowledge. An exuberant font of knowledge, very happy person. Of course, I'm Chris Williams. You can follow me at Mistwire. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could if you want to. So with that, Mr. Ball, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you for having me on the 1966th episode of vBrownBag. That's the one I was hoping for.
That was it. You
yes.
nailed it.
Yeah. So I'm very excited.
Awesome. So you have the power. You feel free to share at your convenience, sir.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you see it. Well, let me click the share first. That would help, right?
There we go. I see your screen.
Bring up. So tonight, yes, my name is David Ball. We are going to talk about Amazon AppStream, how it's Netflix for your virtual desktops and applications, wavy hands and everything. So as an introduction to who I am a cloud platform architect on the AWS team at WWT, and I hope I don't embarrass any of you. As Chris mentioned earlier, yes, you can see my Twitter feed at David Jason Ball, all three names. I do have a friend, his name is Adam Fisher, and he lets me blog with him at virtualbonzo.com. So many of the things that we'll be talking about tonight, if you want more information on AppStream, I've been working on a series on Virtual Bonzo that I hope you find helpful. As far as a rough career path, right? So I got started in IT by creating a spreadsheet that impressed my boss. From there, I went and got the A+ certification. And I tell you honestly, even 20 some years later, that might be the happiest I felt after taking an exam, because I felt like, wow, maybe I can do this IT stuff. But right, I went from A+ to MCSE to multiple VMware certifications, now to AWS. So if we would have had this, like a month ago, I could have said I have 5 AWS certifications, but one expired because I can be a slacker at times. But I do.
You I get 5. You don't have to specify expired. We would have believed it.
5 sounds better than 4. Anybody can have 4, right? But 5 and 6.
Hey, I only have 4.
Oh, sorry, I said anybody, right? I did have a brief moment as a VMware vExpert, but my job quickly switched thereafter to kind of full-time AWS. So it got harder to put VMware content out there. I was a Veeam Vanguard for 2019 and 2020. And just this year, I was nominated as an AWS APN ambassador. So I'm pretty happy about that. In my spare time, I say I like photography, but I love doing it. I love taking pictures of, honestly, I could take pictures of airplanes all day long, but also things like Alaska and Prague, Czechoslovakia, and stuff like that. I do enjoy landscapes and cityscapes as well. And this year, I will celebrate 25 years of marriage. I have 6 kids, 1 granddaughter. I know I don't look old enough to be a grandpa, but I am, right? And I have 1 1998 2-seat convertible with the original cassette player still installed. No Bluetooth in that thing.
There is going to be a quiz at the end of the show on the history of David Ball, just for anybody listening now.
Yes, so. I just want to give everybody a full picture, right? Just so you can know
the
really,
man, the legend, David Ball.
Right? I do. I love my kids to death, and I hope that they accomplish all their dreams. It's just sometimes I don't want to ride in the car with them. Okay, the feeling's mutual, I think. But anyway, let's jump to what is Amazon AppStream. Well, Amazon AppStream is a fully managed application streaming service that provides end users with I'll say instant access to their desktop applications from anywhere or anything. It's Netflix for applications. When you become an AppStream user, right, you can get access to your applications via a URL, or it can also integrate with Okta and AWS SSO. So you can go to one place to have access to all your applications, and we'll see later, virtual desktops. It works from virtually anything, just any device that has an HTML5 capable web browser. I've connected to AppStream applications, or I've streamed applications from Raspberry Pis, my Windows laptop and desktop, my wife's Mac. Look, it might not be a MacBook. It's some kind of Macintosh laptop, as well as a Chromebook. So anything that has an HTML5 browser can connect to the AppStream page and stream the applications again, or the virtual desktops that you have access to. It is designed to provide and I quote, because this comes from the documentation directly, right? A fluid user experience, meaning that a user should not notice a performance degradation over a natively installed application. And you know this to be true, right? As you turn on Netflix or Amazon Prime, you expect that movie, even though it's streamed over the internet, to perform just as well as if you had inserted a Blu-ray disc into a local player. Amazon has built AppStream with that kind of mentality in mind. They don't want you to be able to perceive a performance difference between a streamed application and one that is natively installed. There is no infrastructure to manage or maintain. AWS manages the AWS resources required to host and stream your applications. It's pay-as-you-go pricing, right? So you only pay for what you use. And it can scale up or down depending on live demand, right? Based on the scaling policies that you set on your AppStream fleet. And we'll look at that later. Like, I just have a few slides, and then we'll jump in the console and look at all these things to introduce them to you in a way that's beyond PowerPoint. And AppStream can be made globally available. And when I say that, basically you can, when you build an AppStream image, right, you can copy that image into multiple regions to make AppStream applications available for multiple regions. You can also share an AppStream image to other AWS accounts. So your reach with AppStream can be global. But what has really built some excitement lately, at least for myself, right, about AppStream, is that you can now use it to publish not just applications, but non-persistent virtual desktops. Many of you may be familiar with Amazon Workspaces, which is kind of like their classic VDI solution. I'm going to say one familiar or one fairly common, I'm going to say complaint, but I hate using that word, is that Workspaces is a persistent desktop, right? There is a one-to-one mapping between a virtual desktop and a user. So why does that matter? But say, let's use an example, and we'll keep it simple, but say there's a 24/7 call center that employs 1,200 people and they perform the same job function, right? So one image can meet the requirements of all these workers. And in 3 shifts, you have 1,200 employees. So every shift has 400 concurrent connections. 400 employees are connecting to do their work. If we had a decision maker that was adamant about using AWS solutions, right? And we are going to use Workspaces no matter what. I don't want to look at other solutions. I'm an AWS fan, as we all are, right? We all are AWS fans. But the fact is to support that call center, even though you have 400 concurrent users and one use case, right? You would need to deploy 1,200 workspaces so that every user would have their unique workspace. But by using AppStream, right, you could create what AppStream refers to as a fleet. You could create a fleet of 400 nodes and to support your concurrent user connections and potentially save the cost of the 800 extra workspaces. So let's just go over some key AppStream concepts real quick. So an image builder is simply a virtual machine that you use to create an image. You can launch and connect to an image builder using the AppStream 2.0 console. And once you connect to the image builder virtual machine, you would then install, add, update any applications that you want to make available to your end users. An image is simply it simply contains the applications that you want to stream or that you want your users to stream. It also contains the default windows and application settings to enable your users to get started with their applications quickly. AWS does provide some base images that you can use to build your own unique images. You can certainly, after you create an image, right, you can connect to it later to update applications, to install updates, whatever you may need to do. You can certainly update it easily. A fleet is simply a number of instances. They're also referred to as streaming instances that run the image that you specify. You set a desired number of streaming instances for your fleet. You can set a minimum and a maximum number, and you configure scaling policies to scale your fleet automatically based on demand. It may be, if there's anybody with say VMware or Citrix VDI background, maybe it would help to think of a fleet as, for Horizon, it would be a desktop pool. And for Citrix, it would be a machine catalog. if you kind of want to think of it that way. A stack consists of an associated fleet, user access policies, and storage configurations. You set up a stack, and then you assign users to the stack so that they can get to the resources available or the applications available in that stack. So a stack can kind of be thought of, like, again, VMware terminology, maybe an entitlement. And in Citrix, it would be a delivery group. And here, I just wanted to show you that AppStream has a very diverse instance types that it supports. So you can, as you see here, you can support the most basic workload up to an application or virtual desktop that needs NVIDIA GPUs. So if there is an application that you want to stream with AppStream, you should be able to do it based on its supported instance types. Now I'll stop there for a second. Are there any questions, Chris?
Can you play Cyberpunk 2077 on it?
Oh man, we can try, right? If you use one of those NVIDIA T4 GPUs, one of those graphics units, maybe.
I have a really crappy video card, and I need to play it at ultra high level definition, and I think we should give this a shot.
I like it. I have to admit, I haven't played it yet.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Actually, I lied. I mean, I'm being facetious. There is actually a legitimate question in the audience. What's the big USP over something like non-persistent view desktops? USP? What's the big USP over something like non-persistent view desktops?
The USP.
Graham, would you mind clarifying that? The big USP? Oh, unique selling point. Yeah, because that's an acronym that everybody knows.
Yeah.
What's the draw of AppStream over non-persistent view desktops? So
basically, AppStream allows you, I'm going to use a Citrix example again, right? Because that seems to be something that people are familiar with. But you know how with, say, XenApp or XenDesktop, you could either publish an application. So when a user launched their Citrix client, they would just see, say, an application in a window.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could publish an entire shared desktop or Windows desktop. So AppStream really isn't, it's similar in delivery as that, right? So we can use AppStream to gain access to individual applications so that I would just see a streamed application window, or I could give the streamed user an entire desktop.
Okay, I don't want to, if this is something that's coming down the pipe later in the presentation, just tell me you'll get to it.
Sure.
Why then would you pick workspaces? I mean, if you've got the flexibility of fleets and the ability to provision for concurrency and all that stuff, why would you even pick something like workspaces?
So that's a great question. And there's at least two things that come to mind initially. First, AppStream and workspaces use a different protocol. So workspaces is able to work better over unreliable internet connections. Now, I live in Snow Camp, North Carolina, so I know all about unreliable internet connections. So if you have a connection that is not high speed, right? I mean, honestly, my parents still to this day don't have high speed internet access.
Oh, mine too.
So there's no way they would ever be able to say stream something, right? So network connectivity network bandwidth. If it's low, if it's unreliable, workspaces is the way to go. Also, AppStream is only able to stream or publish Windows applications.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you wanted a Linux virtual desktop,
or
you
now
cannot
Mac,
get that with AppStream. You would have to use workspaces for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. So here, hopefully, do you see my browser screen open now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent. So what we'll look at here in the demo, we'll kind of start with, we're going to look at building an image. We're then going to look at configuring or creating a fleet. And then we're going to look at creating a stack. So the first thing that you would do in AppStream, right? You would come into images, and on the image registry, right? You would pick, right? An AWS baseline image that closely matches your perceived or your actual use case. What you see in the image registry are those images that have been shared with your account. It could be shared from AWS or your friends. Like I could share one with Chris if I wanted to, if he had his own AWS account. You'll also see the images that you have created, right? Because the owner will say me. So you'll pick an image and then it'll shift over to the image builder. Now the image builder is where, right? You'll see right now I have 4 images that I've created. I can click on an image and see I can click connect. For you to be able to edit an AppStream image, the status needs to be running so that you can connect to it. Notice some of these other ones, they're stopped and I can't connect to them. However, if there was an image that I did not want to use anymore, I could certainly go to actions and either delete it, right, to remove it, or I could click start so that I could update it. So if I click start, and I'm not going to do that here. Honestly, Chris, sometimes like this status, it'll sit here as starting for like 10 minutes. And I could babble, but I don't want to do that. So I cheated and I'm starting with an image that says running, right? So this is what you would do. You would wait your 10 minutes. Your image is now running. You can connect to it. And what you'll see is another tab will open and it'll put you onto a Windows desktop as soon as you click what user you want to log in as. So here, because we're just starting this image and we're looking to install applications, we're going to log in as administrator. Now, in my demo environment that I'm sharing with you, I do not have these AppStream images joined to Active Directory, but you could if you wanted to. The reason why I don't have mine joined to Active Directory is that I have been working with AppStream and Okta integration. I don't have a full-blown Okta account, so I'm using an Okta developer account. And if you have any listeners who know, I just can't find a way to get the Okta developer agent to communicate with Active Directory. Anyway, so that's why I'm logging in locally. So you would log in as administrator. And here is your desktop. So pretend like this is a brand new image. We're going to install some applications that we want users to stream, or we're going to install applications on this desktop that we want the user to stream. Now, just because we're installing an application with AppStream, doesn't necessarily mean we have to do anything different. So whatever procedures you have for installing applications today, follow those same procedures. But what you would do, again, install the application as you normally would. And then when you're done installing applications, you would then open or launch the image assistant. And here, where it says add application, it's not talking about installing applications. All we're doing is that we're going to, when I click this button to add an application, we're going to go search for an executable of an application that we have installed. We're basically signifying this application I want you to stream. So if I click add app, I mean, you can add anything really. We'll just go with Firefox because it's easy, right? Give it a name, display name. What do you want the user to see when they log into the AppStream interface? I'm going to add one more. And you can add, right, all I'm going to do is honestly add the command prompt. Because it's easy. All right, so basically we're saying here, these are the apps I want you to stream. Now, if I could, just for a moment, a little brief detour, one of, I guess, a small aggravation I have with AppStream is that even if you don't want to stream applications, you just want to stream the desktop, there's no button that says, I want to stream the desktop. So you have to add an application, even if it's just one, if you want to stream a desktop in its entirety. So now that we have our apps, we click next. Now the configure apps setting, right? It's very important to actually follow the directions that they have here to the letter. Otherwise, right, you're going to try and customize the image and you're going to say, man, that David guy was a liar. It doesn't save the settings that you configure in the application. Well, that may be true if you don't customize the applications by following these instructions. Now, what we have to do is connect or switch user to the template user. Now, note the second step is to launch the image assistant to launch your apps. Now, how that's important is if I switch user over to the template user, the natural tendency is simply to double click Firefox and make your customizations. But if you do that, it's not going to work. It's not going to keep those customizations. So this is where I'm going to cheat, honestly, and use the command prompt. I'm just going to go in here to the properties and change the text to green. And just close the window. Let's assume I'm done. So I'm done with my application customizations. Now I want to switch the user back to administrator to go back to my image builder. The next thing you have to do is click this Save Settings button. So it's great that you edited the application settings with Image Assistant, but make sure you click the Save Settings button.
Are you trying to tell us that you have to follow the instructions, Mr. Ball?
Yeah, RTFM, right?
So
I say this, right, through experience. Who looks at the directions at the first, right? I'm just demoing stuff. I'm going to click everywhere and figure it out on my own. But yeah, I'm like, then I was like, oh wait, man, look at that. It tells you exactly what to do.
Right,
exactly.
because it needs to capture the registry initializations of a new user going into it and doing the things.
Exactly. So now what we need to do, right, is it forwards us to this test heading. We need to connect as the test user, right? And then we just verify that the application settings hold. Again, getting to the application using the image assistant. So my text is green. So my settings are indeed saved. All right, so now I can switch back to the administrator user. Click next. When I go to optimize, what it's going to do, it's going to launch each of these applications. And it's doing this process to identify the launch dependencies and to perform optimizations so that the application launches as quickly as possible. But you click on launch. Is it up in the background? Man, oh man. I guess this is a great thing about live demos, right?
Uh-oh, what happened?
Now, remember, so the text isn't green here because I'm running this as the administrator user.
Right, right.
Oh, there's Firefox. It did ultimately open. Oh, man. Next, we've done that. We've done that.
What are you doing?
There we go. All right. So it's going to launch Firefox this time. And really what you would do in Firefox, you would come and customize it, right? To not do the default browser check. Don't check for updates, all that kind of stuff. So here it is, optimizing the launch experience. Here's where we give it a name. So AppStream Demo 2, AppStream Demo 2, right? Certainly you would use a name that is good for you as you're filling this out, right? You would also, if there's any relevant tagging strategy that your organization has, you would use the add tag to put those in. Basically what it's going to do when I click disconnect and create image, if all goes according to plan, it's going to kick me out of this window. Well, it's going to say something like your session has ended. It won't necessarily kick me out.
And the tagging structure in there looks very familiar. Can that tagging structure be parsed by other services like SSM or Lambda to make it do a thing if somebody's, for whatever reasons?
To be honest with you, Chris, I haven't messed with it to that degree. I could make an assumption, but
I'm assuming yes.
I would make the same assumption, but I personally have not messed with an image in that way.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So if we click on refresh here, we should see our image is snapshotting. So basically it's creating an image out of the image builder machine that we were just using. Again, this snapshotting, it could sit here for 10 minutes, but basically once it's done, the status of the image should go to stopped. When the image is stopped, then we can proceed through the build by creating a fleet. So I have a couple fleets created already, but I have another image that I can use. So we're going to make a fleet out of this AP Demo 1 image. So again, a fleet is just simply a collection of AppStream instances based on an AppStream image. If I click create fleet, again, I give it a name. I'll just say AS Demo 1. Again, there's more tags. If you wanted to tag this fleet, with specific values, you certainly could.
I've spent far too much time in SSM, and now whenever I see key value pairs, I'm like, ooh, what can you do with it?
Yeah, yes. Here, if you wanted to, right, I could certainly scroll through all the images I have at my disposal here, or you can filter based on instance family. You could also filter based on operating system. So I'm going to select this AP Demo 1 image as the base for my fleet and go down here and click next. Oh, now this is where we start to get into some good stuff here. So note that I created this image, this AP-Demo 1 image using a general purpose image. Mm-hmm. But look, I can take a general purpose image, and if I needed, I could create a compute optimized fleet out of it, or a memory optimized fleet out of it. So some images can be used to create fleets with different instance types. But note, right, we looked at, there's graphics AppStream instance types. I can't take my general purpose image and use it to deploy a graphics AppStream instance. But we're going to stick with general purpose. For this case, I'm just going to go with a medium, 2 CPU and 4 gig of RAM. The fleet type, right? We have 2 choices. There's on demand and always on. We'll see later, but as we scroll down this list, actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cheat a little bit. We see a minimum and maximum capacity. So if I choose on demand and left my fleet capacity at minimum of 1 and maximum of 5, what it's going to do is it's going to deploy 1 instance from this fleet, but it's going to leave it powered off so that when a user makes a connection to this AppStream stack or the stack that's using this fleet, they'll have to wait a minute or two, right, for that instance to power up and for the client to connect. With always on, right, it's always like it's going to deploy 1 instance because that's my minimum capacity, and it's going to be powered on, and it's going to be powered on always, so that when I connect through the AppStream browser page, right, I'll get instant access to my applications as opposed to having to wait. Now, of course, with the machine being always on, you'll have to pay like for the machine being on 24/7, the full price, even if somebody's not streaming. With on demand, I believe for this instance type, but maybe there's some way to share the AppStream pricing page URL or whatever. I think it's like 2.5 cents for this machine to kind of be available but powered off. So in this case,
so when it's in cold standby, it still costs a little bit.
It does, yes.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to choose on demand. And as you continue to scroll down, you can specify a maximum session duration, as well as disconnect and idle disconnect timeouts.
Before we get too far ahead, I do want to field a couple more questions that came in from the audience. So a couple of different statements. So the image just made is basically a golden VM image.
In essence, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then if you're going to get into this, just we'll keep our pants on. The user number 2. So user number 1 has the cold standby instance. What happens? And they've logged in and they're now in their session. What happens with user number 2? What's the next sequence? So
what will happen when user 1 logs in? That second cold instance will start to boot up. So if it's on demand, right, that second user they may have to wait slightly longer than the,
Gotcha.
like if it's simultaneous, the second user, whoever that is, may have to wait longer than say the 1 to 2 minutes. But if it's a user logs in, what will happen if nobody else logs in is that say the second instance will get to its power save state and then be waiting for that second user to connect.
Gotcha.
Up
Okay,
to
cool.
the maximum of 5.
Right.
The sixth person in this case is just
they're SOL. They can't get
out of luck. Yeah. But thank you. Good questions. But yeah, here, right, you do set the minimum and the maximum capacity. Let me also point out that, and I'll show this, but these settings aren't, not all of them are set in stone, right? So if you deploy this and you set a minimum capacity at 10 and a maximum capacity at 50, and your boss comes down and says, oh, people love AppStream, but we need 100 more, right? Can you make the maximum capacity 150? Don't worry your little head about that. Yes, you can come back in and edit this fleet later on and change this to, I'm going to say whatever you want, but that's not quite true. And I'll share why that is a little bit later. But yeah, you can change these values after the fact.
Do you tell that to your boss? Don't worry your pretty little head about this.
You know, Long loves when I say that to him. Yes. Yes. I will never say that to Long. And Long, if you're watching. So, but here, now let me say this, the stream view, this, I'm going to say this is one of the other little minor irritations I have with AppStream, in that I have to pick one or the other. So I have to specify whether I want the stream view for this fleet to be an application window, or I have to set it to desktop and specify that the desktop is the streaming window. One fleet, I got to pick one or the other. So if you wanted to make both desktops and applications available, you would need 2 fleets and 2 stacks to make that happen. And this setting, whatever you set this here, you cannot change it after the fleet is created. So this is one of those settings where if you change your mind later and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have made it desktop or application, you're recreating your fleet. Scaling details, this is how you specify, how does it scale? It says out and in. I keep thinking up and down, but whatever verbiage you like to use, this controls the scaling both up and down. And if you wanted to give these instances an IAM role, you could certainly do that as well using this option here.
Nice. Another quick question. This one's revolving around licensing. How does Windows licensing work with the scaling process?
Oh, so that is definitely, I'm going to have to get back on that one. We'll circle back.
Well, I mean, these are on-demand instances, and the on-demand instances have the license tied to them. So when they turn on, that's when you start getting charged just like you would a regular on-demand server, right?
That is true. Yes. Yes. Okay. But yeah, the specifics of the licensing, I would agree with what you said, but otherwise,
well, hopefully they're not asking about like the vagaries of an EA. Say the company's got an EA agreement, and then they, no, we don't care.
Double back, circle back on that one.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, here is where we would specify the VPC. We want to put these AppStream. We're talking about the AppStream instances here,
right?
And then you'll see, right, all the subnets available to you. Now, I'm selecting subnets that I know to be private, right? So these don't have to be on public subnets in order to be accessible through a web browser. It's kind of like workspaces in that there's a like an AWS managed streaming VPC that we really have no access to, that
Gotcha.
does kind of like the streaming magic and the internet stuff. Now, this is what I want to say. When I talked about, yeah, you can scale it up to however much you want. And that's sort of true. But if you say scale it for 50,000 and your subnets are only able to support, 500 instances, right, well, you're only going to get 500 instances.
So always put your AppStream servers in a /16 and you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, their own VPC with a /16. And then you click create to create this fleet. Now, because I chose on-demand pricing, I'm being prompted to acknowledge that there will be a small hourly fee, even if a user is not streaming from an instance. Again, it's like 2.5 cents, but that probably depends, at least in regards to the general purpose instance types. It's probably higher, I assume, for some of the graphics units. But again, the AWS AppStream pricing page has it all laid out. I just haven't memorized it yet.
Unacceptable. So I noticed that you spun up 10, minimum of 10. So does that mean that you have 10 warms? Is that, or 10 cold standbys,
yes,
like priming and idling now? Okay.
Absolutely. And,
gotcha.
And thank you for reminding me of that, because I'll need to delete that.
Right.
Yeah. Or, right, I can't edit it right now because it's in startup mode. But if you see here, if I go to say a fleet that is running, I can click edit,
change it,
and I can change the desired capacity. And if I go to the scaling policies tab, I could also change the maximum capacity.
Nice.
And that's great, right? I've had, say, on-prem VDI customers who, that was one customer I remember specifically, they wanted to increase their VDI pool by like 120 desktops. I mean, it really wasn't much, but their SAN was out of space. Right. So they were going to have to buy an additional disk shelf to support 120 virtual desktops. Really, you could probably fit all those on a fancy USB disk now, but at the time, right, it was something else. But they were going to have to pay like $70,000 for that shelf because their SAN was 3 years old, which I guess in SAN age is ancient. So but here, right, we could easily expand the capacity without having to buy anything up front. Let's say once we have a fleet, we can then create a stack, right? And this is where we, I don't know if it's going to let me do it yet, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, it might. Okay, so I'm going to give it a name, stack one, blah, blah. Here's where I choose the fleet that I'm going to give users access to. In this case, I'll use the one that's starting, though if I tried to connect to this, right, it wouldn't work yet because the fleet is not in a running operational state. There's more tags. If you want to put some tags, right, on your stack, you certainly can. Here's an interesting piece where you can, even though, say, AppStream is non-persistent, right? So when the user logs off their session, that instance is shut down and deleted and a new one created, right? So user's not going to get the same instance twice. But even though it's non-persistent, you can enable some measure of persistence. In this case, we are saying, yes, you know what? I want users to have home folders that follow them between sessions. And in this case, we're going to save those home folders to an S3 bucket. but you can also integrate AppStream with Google Drive and OneDrive for Business.
Oh, nice.
Here's some more interesting things. Here you can specify under the user settings, like what you want the clipboard to do. Do you want to be able to send files to and from this AppStream instance? Do you want them to be able to print to a local device? Right, so you can enable or disable any of these features. Another thing, I don't know if it's fair to say odd, but right, I'm not logging into Active Directory, but you know that you actually have to enable one of these things. So password sign in for Active Directory or smart card. So if I tried to say disable them both, thinking, well, I'm not logging into Active Directory, so I don't need it, right? It won't let you continue. And here's another very interesting thing in regards to persistence, right? We just talked about how you can use AppStream to save user files in a directory. Well, here with this application settings persistence, we're talking about saving, so application settings, right? So we did, as we built the image, we used the template user to kind of create a default user profile. Well, if a user wants to make like some additional settings changes, like maybe we published Firefox and they wanted to save a bookmark or whatever, enabling this will allow us to save those changes off to an S3 bucket, so that when the user logs back into their next instance, right, their application settings follow them. So even though it's non-persistent, we can get a perceived persistence as far as the user is concerned. Another key thing, like this is another thing I found out kind of the hard way, if you will, this settings group. If users have access to, say, multiple stacks and you want their application settings to follow them, say even between stacks, you would want to make sure that the settings group for those stacks is set the same. It's going to save your application persistence settings in these groups. These settings groups always default to the stack name. So what you could find is that a user logs in and runs Firefox from one stack, and they could log in and run Firefox on another stack. Well, they could have different bookmarks. They could have different home pages. It could just be completely different. And for some people, it could like blow their mind. Like, I don't understand why it's different. So just be sure, be careful when setting the settings group, that if you want persistence, if you want application settings to follow users between stacks, you need to make sure the settings group is the same for both of those stacks.
Got it.
And this might make more sense. Honestly, what I hope is that this vBrownBag just kind of gets you curious. Like, I want to go play with AppStream and see what it's like. Like, all this stuff may start to make more sense as you dig into it.
You can hit up David on Twitter. David Jason Ball on Twitter if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really on Virtual Bonzo, I did kind of go more in depth. Like if you want to see something in writing, go out there
awesome.
To look at what we did. But here we create a stack. And stack creation, I already have the same name. Anyway, it should be quick, right? So users can gain access to stacks pretty quick. So in terms of assigning users access to an AppStream stack, in this case, I'm just going to show you the user pool setting, right? So all I got to put in here is an email address. Doesn't even have to be, say, some user in my domain. Doesn't even have to be a business address. If you got an email address, I can give you access to an AppStream stack. And this is where the use of AppStream has started to increase for some of especially some of those application providers or developers who create applications, right? You want to download a demo, but it's like, 7 gig of data. And then it's like a 3-hour installation process. Well, now they're using AppStream. Like you provide an email, they provide you an AppStream stack so that you don't have to go through the installation of their application, at least yet, not to demo it.
That's pretty slick.
But yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said that's pretty slick. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. So to assign a user to a stack, you just select the user, you assign stack, and then, right, you just pick from your list what you want the user to go to or have access to. This email notification, right, will send that user an email saying, hey, you've been given access to the AppStream stack XYZ. They click on the link to go to a page, not that one. One like this, right? Where they would just put in their email address. Now, the first time they log in, they'll be prompted to create a password. They'll see the stacks that they have access to. So they'll be able to pick from, say, applications. I should have shown the desktop, right? Because that's the one that has me more excited. Here's where I click Notepad++, right? And see, it's right because it's on demand. And powered off in power save mode, if you will. I'm having to wait for that instance to come up.
Right. While we're doing that, I just wanted to point out something super, super adorable. Fozzie's been watching us the entire time and enjoying the vBrownBag with the rest of us. And he bit me a couple times too.
Like evidently I'm not energetic enough to keep a cat awake. Hopefully.
Nobody's that energetic.
Yeah. But I think it was you who tweeted the other day, right? That like she was sitting there kind of like a Roman emperor type. Oh, rub my belly human.
He always does this. He just like as soon as I start talking, blap, just like flattens out in front of me, and then bites me. Proceeds to bite the hell out of me. So
I love it, and right. Hopefully this will start soon. But again, this is where you may have to evaluate. There may be some users who you have to do always on for, and some who can be on demand.
Justify your use case. Do you need it to be less than 2 minutes? Now this is, I'm assuming like this will be first thing in the morning. Like they go in, they fire it up first thing in the morning. If they left it and then came back in again, would they have to wait another 2 minutes or is it?
No, they would not, unless, remember how when we created the, I think it was the fleet, right? Where we specified the maximum duration in minutes.
Yes, 960 minutes.
If they disconnected and they were disconnected longer than that session duration, then
they have to restart.
They have to wait 2 minutes. But if they go to lunch and they're disconnected for 60 minutes or whatever,
that's a really long lunch.
Back, it's going to be for some people they only have 60-minute lunches, but when they come back, yes, it should return them to where their session disconnected very quickly.
Awesome. Cool.
And so we can also, what we can do is click here, right? I can launch multiple AppStream applications. And you see how the subsequent applications, right, opened quickly because they're running off that same instance.
Right. The instance is hot now, so it can crank all these things up. Nice.
So that's a streaming app. Now to close out, it's not just clicking X. You have to log out to end the session. Otherwise, basically what I did by clicking the X, I'm disconnecting.
Gotcha.
So I know we're approaching time, but I'm just going to launch the desktop real quick. Hopefully I can see. Chris, honestly, I thought with a whole hour I would be able to fit all this in, and I'm so sorry.
You were like, I've only got 30 minutes of material. We're never going to finish this up. I'm like, and this is great stuff. So I'm happy to run long.
And this right, because I connected to a different stack, a different fleet. I'm again having to wait the 2 minutes for this desktop to come up, and then that'll be good. Again, I hope that this has been at least somewhat helpful, maybe even interesting. And Chris, I do thank you for allowing me to come on and talk about AppStream a bit. So I appreciate that.
That's very self-effacing of you, but this was fascinating. This is fantastic stuff. I mean, this is for the folks in the audience that have been doing Horizon and VDI and Citrix, and they had to like go buy servers and install Citrix and wire them up to the SAN. This should be a breath of fresh air. This is so much easier. It's literally clicking on buttons, and the entire thing can be, you know, scripted into a couple of CloudFormation templates and rubber stamped out ad nauseum. So I don't see how you couldn't be excited about something like this.
Well, you have certainly made my night by saying that.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see if there's any questions from the audience. So you're going to double check with the licensing thing, and then we'll get back to Graham. He's a show favorite, so I'll make sure that he gets that answer.
Gotcha.
He's also sharing pictures of his cat. Huh?
Is he showing pictures? Okay. I don't have a cat, but you know what? I've got like a little, like a Yorkie. I guess
you have like 18 kids or something, so that's enough.
I don't know. So yeah, here we are. We're at our virtual desktop. So right, streaming a virtual desktop with AppStream, non-persistent. It's deleted when I log out. So check it out. Go check it out.
Now you say non-persistent, but you have a home drive and you have application persistency from reboot. So it's not really non-persistent. I mean, the session is non-persistent, but your data, your static data is still there.
Correct. Yes. Yep. So it's the best of both worlds, right? So again,
it's like a fuzzy middle ground.
Yeah, the user doesn't care what their hosting is.
Exactly.
They're on a non-persistent desktop. They just want their files to be there. They want their application settings to be there.
I've just heard like you know, directors of IT say, if it's non-persistent, I don't want it. And I'm like, well, this is not non-persistent. I mean, it's disingenuous to say that it's non-persistent, because you can make it as persistent as a user would care. Yeah. Even if it was like some kind of like a developer, if you're doing VS Code, you can still get all your files. You can still get all of your hooks and your DLLs and everything. It's not like it's non-persistent.
And you could even, honestly, you could take this to another level, even if we have people listening who know about Liquidware, Profile Unity, and Flex. Right? All I would have to do on, say, my gold image is install that Liquidware agent, and then let it import in Flex apps, applications, as I log in. Let it save the user settings. Why? Because another thing, right? If you look at the AppStream image builder, you can build server 2012 images, 2016, and 2019. Well, 2012 has a different profile version than 16 and 19. So it's not going to be able to save persistence amongst all of those operating system types, but Liquidware could.
Right.
So really almost even better persistent non-persistence. I don't even know if I said that right. You're smarter. So
no, you said it right.
Figure out the verbiage. But yeah, like as you're exploring AppStream, look at Liquidware and Profile Unity and Flex App and just imagine the possibilities.
I've actually been a fan of liquidware for a very long time. Me and the guys that TRX is a drinking buddy of mine.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let's wrap this up so that everybody can go to sleep. Mr. Ball, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. We really appreciate it. This was fantastic. I'm definitely going to be playing with AppStream and checking out the widgets in the near future. Let me one last time. Let me make sure that all of the fields have been answered appropriately. Oh, more CapEx. Wonderful. Cool. All right. No, we've cleared the questions for the evening. That was some great questions too. Thank you from the audience. Awesome. All right. Well, Mr. Ball, have yourself a wonderful evening. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you again in the future.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.